Now in case any of these are too fast, we're gonna go ahead and do it in real time. So what I always do is I always find the fuse. Obviously it's gonna be laid out. Best way to do it is to obviously get the fuse and then kind of pull down until you can't pull it no more. That way you know which side of the tube you need to cut into, either this side or this side. It came down to here, so I know I want to cut down here. So what I always like to do is right at the very bottom of the cake, you get right below it. Just be careful to push up on the scissors, so that way you don't accidentally cut. If there's any fuses there, you don't want to cut those. So just kind of push it through, stick your fingers in, pull it, peel it back so you have plenty of working room. You'll notice this one, you can see the little base it has. So now that we got that peeled back, there's some tape over this. I'm not covering up the fuse, so I kind of cut that tape just so I can get at the actual tube itself. And then you cut the fuse right at the base where it doesn't come out no more. And you can either use that fuse for some other purpose or just toss it away or in the burn pile. It's just a slow fuse. And then with your brass awl, obviously make sure you have brass. I got this one specially made. Has Big T Pyro and TJ, one of the fellow Cape Cat members, gave it in my first Pyro musical display. So you would then poke carefully. Again, I recommend do this if you've done it before. If you haven't done it before, definitely have someone show you a couple times to kind of get the feel of it, because it is a technique that you kind of have to learn. Now you want to poke not all the way through the whole entire tube, just into the tube to where you can feel the lift charge, and you'll be able to hear, I don't know if you hear it, but there'll be kind of a, it's almost like you're running this poker over rocks. That means you're in the black powder, the lift charge, and that's where you want to be. Just to make sure the hole is big enough. Luckily, this one is made a little bit bigger than normal brass awls, so that way when it goes in, it makes a perfect hole for an E-match. And then I take the MJG Firewire initiator. This is the non-regulated E-match. I always like to prep it, because if I'm going to touch this cake, I don't want to touch it twice. And when you plug into the modules, you can usually have to crimp over the edges, so I like to do that before I put it in the actual Firework, just in case if this match goes off, it's not in the Firework while I'm doing it. So some of them will have it split for you, so you can just see that little hole. You can grab both fingers. Others won't, and you have to use your fingernails to kind of pull it apart, because you don't want to pull the covering or the plastic piece over the wire. And then, like, if you put this in a module, you would have this extra inch or so sticking out. The problem with that is if you're putting in and it only goes in about an inch into the mod, so about that far, this other inch is kind of sticking out of the mod, and you have a chance for a crossfire if this touches another cue on the firing system. So I always like to fold it over so that way it fits in perfectly once we plug it into the Cobra mod on both sides. And then to make sure this is still shunted, so that way I can transport it and should be no electrical current, just kind of grab them together and twist them together. So that way when you get out in the field, it's a lot easier to pull this cake, set it, secure it, and then you just unwind this bind and plug it straight in the Cobra. Saves you a little bit of time in the field, and trust me, when it's 90, 95 degrees like it is here in the Midwest, I don't want to be out there longer than I have to. This little cover is always going to be on your E-matches. Never ever take this off unless you absolutely have to. If you have to, I always recommend doing it on the field, because when you take that off, you have a risk of any friction, or sometimes actual hitting it will set it off. So you always want to keep this little shroud on it at all times. And then good thing with these holes in that brass awl, it poked a perfect hole, so you just plop it right into that lift charge. And then for taping, you obviously want to cover up that lift charge, because you don't want no exposed black powder on your shoot site if you don't have to. So you kind of cover it up like that, just like the cake's new. For me, this next step you don't have to do. Some pyros would just cut off this piece, but for me, I like to kind of keep it all together. So I put that tape over like that, just to kind of make it look like a normal cake again, so it's easier to tape. Like for these ones, we're going to tape these two together eventually, so it's easier to tape them together if you have a common cake. And then what you want to do is you want to put a piece of tape right about the outside, and you want to make sure you run your fingernails on the side of the wire. The purpose of this is, so let's say you have this hooked up to your module, and someone in the field walks by, or you walk by, or anyone that walks by, if they accidentally snag this wire once it's plugged in, what it's going to do, it's going to rip here, but it's not going to come out of the tube. That's the whole purpose of this. It is a little bit extra work, but it ensures that if you snag a wire, you don't know if it came out of that lift charge or not. If you have a double-proof system, you ensure that you get 100% fire, or at least you hopefully get 100% fire as long as the E-match is good, the firing system fires it. But that's a little prepping tip. We use that on the actual professional world. What we would do on the professional shells is we would actually tie this wire off to the rack itself, so that way when the shell goes up, it rips off right there and it doesn't rip out of the mod. Or if someone grabs the wire and accidentally yanks it, it will yank it on the rack and not the actual shell itself. Because when you're working 1-3, obviously you got exposed black powder that you're putting these E-match ports in, or these you got the exposed black powder that's touching this right here, and you never want to have that chance of friction or accidental fire. So you always want to be safe as you can be. And then for me, to make it nice and neat in the field, I always like to kind of roll it up. Depending on how I'm stacking it in the box or it's kind of out in the open, I like to put a little piece of tape right here at the top. Not really tight, just kind of to hold that wire there. That way when you get out in the field, you tape it, secure it, make sure it's safe, and then you just lift it right up. And there you go. You plug that straight into the mod and you're ready to fire this firework. So that's how I kind of prep my 500 gram cakes. That's how I prep my 200 gram cakes, as you saw. That's how I prepped my Ghost Drag on the NOAB. We did kind of show you a little bit on the Pro items, which already have an E-match port, so you don't have to poke into the cake. Those are always pretty nice. And then we did show you the daytime smoke, how you could fuse up and lead it to an actual quick match. So we have one quick match that's going to fire all 3 of these cakes. For me, quick match is more expensive than fuse, so I'd rather use fuse. And I use this roll here, which has, I think it's a 1.5 burn time per foot, and I got like 400 feet, I believe, or I think it's 300 feet in total. So I will rather spend 30 bucks on this right here than having to replace 3 matches that each cost, 30 to 50 cents a piece, because they add up once you start shooting more and more 200 gram cakes. So Pyros, that's kind of my walkthrough of how I set up my show and display. I probably won't have time. I will try. In my 4th of July display, I'll kind of walk through the actual layout and setup before I actually land everything. It just all depends on if I have enough time. It's going to be 95 degrees that day on the 3rd when I'm going to shoot my show. I'm trying my best, but hopefully you guys like this little walkthrough of how to prepare fireworks, or at least how I prepare them. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments. Definitely let me know in the comment section down below if you guys have any questions, if you have any sense of direction, or let me know your methods of how you prepare your fireworks. But for now, Pyros, I hope you enjoy, and I will see you all tomorrow with my 4th of July video.